Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets fall in overtime in the first of back-to-back meetings with the Indiana Pacers. Trendon Watford says, I don't want to play anymore. And the Nets finally start doing some tank-like decisions when it comes to the roster. We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Get over to FanDuel today. And Doug, 105.99 overtime session here. The late sequence at the end of regulation, not the prettiest, but the Brooklyn Nets end up playing a tough game against the Pacers, 105.99, and there's everything inside of this one that you would expect from a Jordy Fernandez-led basketball team.
Yeah, look, they just hang tough again. We've said this so many times in the season. You just can't take the team lightly. I mean, I know Pacers come in without Halliburton, but this is still a pretty strong squad, and they've been okay without him for the most part. And they play a Nets team that just is gonna just try, and they're gonna fight you and like literally fight you and get kicked out of the game, and just aggressively hound the ball handlers and just make it impossible for you to get into your actions at times. And this has been, it's what, if the Nets were really trying this year, this would have been one of the most fun seasons ever. Because if this was a team that was trying, that had like one top 15 player, I think this season would be like tons of fun. It's only not fun because the motivations around like what they quote should be doing seem completely out of whack with how they show up on an every night basis. And this was no different. We take the Pacers all the way to overtime in Indiana, right? Yeah. And could have easily won this game. And so it's just one of these things where it's been like this all season long. It is fun to watch. I wish we were watching under different circumstances. I think if we were watching under different circumstances and the team had like 33 wins or something like that, I think the tone would be completely different because the team fights so damn hard every single night. And we just get to the end of these games and you're like, maybe it's not going to get the 24 wins. Like this could be a real problem. But this game was like sort of all of that wrapped into one and all the way into OT.
Yeah, and you talk about, I mentioned the closing sequences. So before we talk about the Trendon Watford of it all, which again is indicative of how much this team does have fight and they want to scrap, and he's 100% looks like in the wrong in the sequence that we see him get
He's going to get suspended. He's going to get suspended for sure.
Well, you know what? Let's just go there let's just go there first, because it's amazing. Because I first watched the sequence and you just see like he gives Myles Turner Myles Turner gives him a shove, he shoves him back. Now they're in the scrap, and you're like, man, what the heck went on over there? Like, and he's lit up about it. He's getting Trendon Watford pulled to the bench, and he's pointing over and he's saying, listen, I'll see you in the parking lot. How dare you? And I thought, man, what is Myles Turner? What, a little cheap shot or something around the basket? Then they play it back, and you see that as Trendon Watford's going up the court, he just shoves Nemhard. Like, seemingly like, F you. And then Myles Turner comes over to defend him. Jordy Fernandez ends up getting flung into the seats in the process of it all. It was an incredible sequence to have it all end with kind of going, yeah, I guess Trendon Watford just kind of lost his cool there for a beat. And by the way, when you're probably playing a game like this and you're a little bit undermanned, a little bit undersized, Myles Turner is a big body. I'm sure the Trendon Watford probably like, I just spent a lot of this game. It was a third quarter there. I spent a lot of this game like banging bodies with this dude, trying to get my work done on the offensive end. Like, F you. And I'm not going to shove you first. I'm going to shove the smaller guy as I go up the court here before I get into it, maybe one of the bigger guys.
Oh, and also like to wrap it back to the tanking thing, because if you're a Nets team, it's like wanting to tank. Maybe this is part of it. Watford was like their first or second best player against the Pacers.
On the replay, you also saw Jordy Fernandez. He gave a little tug of the earlobe, gave the signal to Watford. And he goes, all right, and broke off the shirt and went WWE.
Yeah, so like, Watford's really, really playing well. And so maybe they're like, we can't stand for this. But, overall, like to see the kind of fight, and this is a very chippy game. I was watching actually on the Pacers feed. I like just because, I don't know, sometimes just like to watch what other teams broadcasts are saying. Sometimes we're just too lazy to click over from League Pass from the one to the other too. So let's just, call it like, we can maybe call it like it is. It's like, that just feels like one extra click that I'm not interested in doing it. So we'll listen to the Pacers feed. But they were kind of aggressive. They were like joking that Tony Brothers had just had it with this game because it was so chippy, and the game was incredibly chippy. Like this, I don't think there was like leading toward a fight, but there was a lot of physical play. And that's just not something you typically see from teams who should have called it much earlier in the season, right? You're playing out the string. It's not all about the W's, at this point in the season, but it's just not how the Nets are rolled all the way to the end of the game and into overtime when they're closing with basically their starting five. Like, they close with D'Lo, Keon, Clax, Ziaire, and then they close with Tyrese Martin over Jalen Wilson. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, they're putting their best five out there on a nightly basis, and those guys have the edict to go out and win. I mean, like that's clearly what the marching orders are. The marching orders are like, these are our best. This is our best 5-man combination for this, and you're to go out there and try to win the game. And if it takes going to overtime, let's go to overtime. I mean, they've had some brutal end game sequences that would make you think they were tanking, but like beyond that, it wasn't because of the players they put out on the court. And we can go through some of the sequences. A couple of them are hilarious, but like this is just, they're just not doing it. And I did a solo podcast yesterday about this very topic.
Right? How'd it
go? I was gonna make a joke, but it's too early in the morning for me to think. So but it's just like this, they've done this algebra equation on what it means to show your players that you really care about the organization, or to just show your players that you want to lose. And they've clearly come up with some internal metric that says it's better to do it the way they're doing it now. Whatever you think it is, right or wrong, Keon Johnson sitting out, that's not even weird. Like plenty of players just sit out over the course of a season. And last night was no different. Like they were just like, no, best five. Let's go. Overtime. Let's try to win this. And Pacers made it so it didn't happen. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I again, going back to the top of the show, if this was any other season, we'd be so ecstatic, sort of like about what was going on with the fight mentality. But that's just not the case.
And agonizing over some of these games like this, like you said, right? Like it's a team, we sit here and we talk about them being 23-47. If it was, even if it, 6 more wins and 6, fewer losses, where 7 fewer losses, where you're talking about being 30-40 right now, like you would feel differently about what's going on. You'd feel different about the sequences. And then at the end of the year, as we talked about previously, going back a month or so, when it felt like, oh no, is this team going to win more games than we anticipated, and significantly over that 19.5 win margin coming into the year, you would have said, okay, where do we start to feel great about what they accomplished this year, even if it only ends up being a 38 win season or something like that? However, 23 wins. However, overtime loss, 105-99 to the Pacers. Coming up here in a second, we'll talk about the key players that did have good performances. Ziaire Williams continues to play very strong. D'Angelo Russell, last sequence there in regulation did not go their way. What are some of the other sequences that did not go their way? We'll do that here in just one moment.
All right, before we get that, tell you about our friends over at Upwork. Look, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility, connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries. Got IT, got AI. We all know we need that now. Web development, marketing. Maybe you need some extra hands for a project or just a long-term partner. Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, they'll help you connect with a freelance expert who can deliver those incredible results. It's fast and easy hiring, and posting a job is super simple, totally free. Within a day, multiple qualified candidates you're going to have to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps you find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale any business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. And when you're done with that, head on over to our friends at FanDuel. March Madness is here. FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. $200 extra bucks using everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. Maybe you were on, didn't like Kansas yesterday. Kind of went your way. And who even cutting down the net right now? They got some Duke stuff. You're watching. They got eyes on the draft here. Duke with St. Mary's. They got a parlay, race to 5 points, minus 430. Who even comes up with this stuff? Race to 5 points at minus 430. I don't even know what it means, but I like it. And it's what you can just get over at our friends on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel.com.
All right. So as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the 105-99 overtime loss to the Indiana Pacers. I always enjoy as these two teams will play each other again on Saturday, when two teams meet back up after things get a little bit chippy. We talk about it in the first segment there. Yeah, maybe these games don't really matter for Brooklyn. They should be shutting it down. That's cool. But because these games don't matter and because they are trying to tank, it kind of does maybe loosen the leash a little bit when it comes to holding yourself back in a game like this. Trendon Watford likely not going to be available, but maybe the next player up. You know who I like? We talked about Claxton all season long. I know we're going to get into these players that had good games against the Pacers, but I like a Day'Ron Sharpe. He's like twice in his career, I can vividly picture in my mind when he's gotten irritated in a game. He's the kind of player that I think can get aggressive against Myles Turner. So keep your eyes open for that. FanDuel should consider having some odds on things like that as well. But in this one, we look over, we see while the closing sequence in regulation ended with Ziaire Williams absolutely missing the basket in every form and fashion on a three-point attempt, he did have 35 minutes, 8 of 15, and 6 of 12 from beyond the arc, 22 points. He continues to put together, like, this end of season for him is a very solidifying, definitely bring him back. We've talked about him already a couple of weeks ago. He needed this in order for, I think, you and I to have that kind of confidence in him, and he's been crushing it over the last month and a half of the season.
Oh, man, you know what? I should get this up here. Let me see. I'll see. Nets PR tweeted out a stat about Ziaire Williams, and I'll get it after I stop talking after this one, and then I'll find it. But it was something. It's something about the most 3-pointers in a stretch since X amount. I'll go find it. But it's really, but it overall speaks to just how good he's been. Like, he's been their best 3-point shooter over the last month and a half. 6 for 12 on 6 for 12 on volume threes. He hit. They only made 14 threes total. He hit 6 of them over the course of the game. He's been really good. He's a free agent this summer. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him. He's done exactly what we said at the beginning of the season he needed to do, which is to hit threes and play defense. And that's what he did. And it's funny too, because even at the end of the game, well, that's one of these things where I was like, maybe they are trying to tank, because at the end of the game, they weren't even having like D'Lo bring the ball up. Like, Ziaire Williams was bringing the ball up over midcourt to get into these actions. And I'm thinking, is this really what they want? Like, is this the exact, he's been really good, but is this who you want bringing the ball? This is after TJ McConnell steals it.
Offense good? Is that where we're at now?
This is after TJ McConnell just straight up steals it from Tyrese Martin on a play that like essentially swings the game. And I'm like, they have D'Lo out there. Like, why are these guys the guys bringing the ball up into like this half court pressure?
One of the rare lapses for Jordy Fernandez, where he goes,
well, that's why I was like,
no, give it to D'Lo. Give it to D'Lo. I was sorry. That's my bad, guys.
I was like, maybe they are kind of trying to lose this one. I don't know. Like, they're just doing a few little things in this game that just didn't pass the sniff test. But dude, Zaire's been awesome. To think that the Nets traded EJECTED, who never even touched the roster, and they got Ziaire Williams and a second. So like, Ziaire Williams is technically part of the Mikal Bridges trade, because EJECTED came as like salary fodder to come over in the Bridges trade. They immediately flipped him, and they get another second-round pick and a guy who is like easily a rotational piece, right? Yeah. And so already, and look, they're gonna have to do. It's not, he's not under contract here, so it's a little shaky on like what the money ends up being. And I think he'll have some market. Like, I think if you're a good team, you could envision how he can fit into how you play, especially on the defensive end. And he's not a complete liability at 3. I mean, that's kind of the whole story for some of these guys. If you're good on defense, it's a classic 3-and-D. If you're good on defense and you can hit threes where they just can't hide, their center on you in some kind of like quasi like weak side drop, and like just make it so you stand in the corner by yourself because they're not worried about you. Teams you can have playing time on just about any team in the league, right? And I think that's like where they are with him. It's going to be an interesting decision about how they view him over the summer on a team that says they don't want to spend money, but they clearly got something with him.
Oh, 100%. I'll let you pull that one up when it comes to 3-point shooting, but I will let you know, Ziaire Williams, 22 points, has recorded the 7th 20-point game of his career, 3rd this season, all per Nets PR. They had some, as you mentioned, they had some great highlight stuff here. So already third out of his 7 have come playing for the Brooklyn Nets and getting his biggest opportunity, right? He also had the Nets.
I misread this thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misread this. I'm just going to cut you off because I'm just going to be done with this tease that we did before. It was just most 3-pointers Ziaire Williams made in a month in his career. So never mind. I misread it, that it was like, it was a list of like most, because I was like, this is why you read things before you say it, because in my mind, it was just scrolling through Twitter. I'm like, oh man, it's like the most 3-pointers in like Nets stuff. Like, I was like, that's crazy. I didn't think he was shooting that many. And then I, of course, don't read the rest. I get marveled by it, and then I don't read the rest. And that's just how the internet works. You see one little piece of information, you graft on whatever you're thinking. and then you move on with your life.
and then Train leaves the station, never look back. I will say
and
though,
then most people it just dies right there, except that then there's like two people that have a podcast, and then then one of them quotes it on the podcast, and then it looks like a total fool. So most 99.9% of the time it doesn't matter at all, and then there's like this one time where it does. Anyway, so good job by him. But his career high.
Here's the beauty of it, though. It helped me stumble into a couple of things. Like that was, by the way, ended up being the 12th time that the Nets and Pacers went to overtime in their history, and it was 6-5. Nets had the advantage. Now 6-6, but the Nets also fell to 0-4 on the season in overtime games. So could have seen that coming potentially there as well. The other thing that we talk about from Ziaire Williams, and by the way, in the month of now March, it's actually pretty impressive. He's shooting 37% from deep in March, but he also has in the month 4, 5, 6, 7 games where he shot over 40%. And even though they come early, it's just worth noting he started the month 0 of 6, 1 of 5, and then also had against the Lakers the 1 of 8 game. So there are 3 aggressive clunkers inside of this month for him, and he's still shooting 37%, still has all those games where he's been knocking it down at a very high clip. The other player in this game, too, was the one that maybe people forgot was on the court in some of these key sequences, and that was D'Angelo Russell. Obviously, we mentioned no Keon Johnson in this one. 32 minutes, 7 of 22, 3 of 12. It's a rough performance for him, like from a shooting standpoint, not the greatest. 6 assists, though, 22 points overall, tied with Ziaire Williams. And I mean, I don't know it's funny, man. A game like this, it's like you flash around, you see 14 rebounds from Nick Claxton, but you see only 6 points for him. I go down into the box score. I see 3 of 10 from Noah Clowney and 1 of 7 from beyond the arc. It's all these little things that I think like game over game, you reach and pull out some of these small numbers and get excited about one thing, maybe the rebounds for Claxton, but no real scoring performance. So not a lot of presence on the interior offensively. That's okay. Sometimes that's how the game goes. Match up against Myles Turner. And then like the Noah Clowney piece where you go, I do love that they leaned into developing the 3-point shot, but it does make then box scores look pretty annoying or, can be difficult to swallow when you feel like there should be more to his game. And that's, I think, a part of like the late season here. Ziaire Williams, we're loving what we're seeing in his box score in a game over game. There's these other players that I think we are getting more sample sizes on that aren't necessarily as easy to get behind.
Well, the offense stinks. There's really no other way to put it. They don't have anybody that can really play.
Too. Good. You know what? Good point by you, Doug. The offense also is brutal for big stretches, game over game.
I mean, this goes all the way back to the beginning of the season. Like we stood on this pretty loudly, especially on like where we thought like the win. We're like it was. I don't think we ever questioned whether I thought they would tank more aggressively. So for sure. So that should add into it. But I just look back to the beginning of the regular season, and I just thought, or we both thought, where's the offense going to come from? Like where, like we've watched enough NBA for the last like many years. We've done this, right? Like, and you just know that there's a certain threshold you need to meet to be able to be competent in the NBA. And then that's just like didn't have it. They didn't have it. And by the way, we weren't wrong. They just scored 99 points in an overtime game in the NBA in 2025. That's like impossible. It's totally impossible to score that few points, especially with a team that plays at a decently fast pace. It's a little different with no Halliburton, but like 99 points in an overtime game is horrible. It's horrible. And they're still in these games because they just like play some kind of mind trick on these other teams where these other teams just can't do it either. I just don't really, I know it's like defense, but when you look in the box score, this is what you see on the kind of night to night basis is this, well, they can't score. So we were right about that. Or we were wrong at times is their ability to just kind of trick the other team into not being able to score also. And so look at D'Lo. I mean, he had an impossible time in this game, but it's like not really his fault. If you're the other team, you can just absolutely tee off on him because look around. You're like, who's going to beat us off the dribble? Like Jalen Wilson? Okay. No. Ziaire Williams?
Step up.
Ziaire Williams is good. Like he's trying, but like he just can't really take it downhill to the basket. Claxton, his season's been terrible, right? And so like
Trendon
who else
Watford,
even is there?
Ejected. Come on.
Well, Watford's like the only other guy that can get downhill.
I know. That's
and
what
so
I mean.
And so like, and that's just the whole list. So when you look at D'Lo 7 for 22, it is a struggle. But I do, and Keon Johnson and him too, maybe he should be thrown in there. These guys just can't, it's just not good enough. So anyway, we'll talk about more of this more in a second. Actually, there's a hilarious, I mentioned D'Lo and Keon Johnson here at the end. I want to get into a couple late game sequence for these, which we maybe scratch my head around the tank. We'll get into that here in just 1 minute. Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Look, daylight savings time. It snuck up on us again. Did for me too. I said, what time is it? What right now? I can only check between the oven clock and my cell phone to know what happened. If you're losing that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. Extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little extra boost to get you through. Maybe you're staying up late to watch the tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work. There you go. Or just trying to keep up with your busy day. 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Look, like I said, staying up late. Maybe you need to get up. Maybe you need to record an early morning podcast with your boy across the camera right there. 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy has you covered. Say at the game you're traveling, it's there. 5 Hour Energy is super easy to grab, keeps you feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, peach, mango. Stop at 5 Hour Energy. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Nice and convenient. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. 5 Hour Energy.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
And as we go ahead and tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the 105-99 overtime loss for Brooklyn with the Indiana Pacers, talking about those sequences and how sometimes, the stats can be misleading when you look at D'Angelo Russell. You have to put it in context of the entire team. I know we want to get to the sequence for you that maybe gives you that little head scratch about what are the Nets up to, because there was no Keon Johnson in this game. I just want to remind everybody, too, it's pretty impressive that you lose 105-99 taking 101 shot attempts. Pacers 81, Nets 101. 20 more shots. And somehow, through the miracle of modern science, they managed to lose the game by 6 points. That's something you got to tip your hat to. What was the beauty of the sequences late here for Keon and D'Lo?
Well, part of the reason they lose is that they send them to the line 31 times. And that was what I was going to say on this. So there's two key sequences near the end of the game. Well, there's three, actually. And I already mentioned one. Tyrese Martin just gets his pocket picked in the backcourt against TJ McConnell. Yeah. And McConnell just gives a sort of like back pass to Siakam, and they get the foul. It's a little out of order here. But there's also late in game, D'Lo takes a shot that just straight up goes over the backboard. And nothing happened to it in the midair. It just was whoop over the backboard. He does that. And then I think it's one possession later, Keon Johnson just fouls Matherin on the three. And so the Pacers can tie the game. And you're and it was obvious. It was obviously a foul. And it was so obviously a foul that they needed to review it to see if it was going to be a flagrant, because he just got into his landing space. So it wasn't even one of these cheapies. And then there was something else in overtime too. Between those things and who they have to bring the ball up, and like I said, D'Lo shooting over the backboard and these terrible fouls and the fight, and you kind of do say to yourself, well, I don't think they did it all on purpose, and maybe the nice way to say it was that was a very winnable game. That's the PC way to say it. It's that game was very winnable, and the Nets might have given it away between the end of regulation and then in overtime, when they just really couldn't get tons done. So anyway, just a couple funny things that, whatever. I'm not blaming anybody. I think they're all trying hard. But when you're a Nets fan, and I scroll through these timelines, you can just see Nets fans are doing the dance constantly of really playing well, but wouldn't mind sticking where they are in the old tankathon odds.
Big deal to go ahead and have a half game cushion with the Philadelphia 76ers for the 5th spot. Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, it's brutal. And by the way, this dance has gone on all season long, effectively, especially remember first 19 games, 9 and 10. And it was I don't know, dude, even back then, the most diehard of tank subscribers. And when we said the right way to do it, and we all know that, all that good stuff. But when they're 9 and 10, you go, I don't know. Maybe we flip the script. Maybe we go the other way with it. And then they, of course, go on brutal losing streaks. And by the time they get around and win 7 of 9, 2 months later, you go, well, this is ridiculous. You can't do that now. You can't go doing that to us now. So it really does take them on the roller coaster in that regard. I'll also say I'll find it interesting. Like, we're going to play again on Saturday. I mentioned the Cam Johnson piece of it. One thing that jumped out in this game, and it has been kind of an ongoing theme here. You mentioned Tyrese Martin, who's like had a good season, but this wasn't a good game for him. 1 of 8, 0 of 5 from deep in 31 minutes. He ends up closing the game over Jalen Wilson, who's another guy that, unfortunately, you talk about like a player that will probably discuss more as the season winds down, but not necessarily in the way that we hoped we were going to. Because this has been a long, bad kind of stretch for him. He hasn't seen the court as much as he was early. The three-point shot has not come around in the second season here. He is shooting 31. He's shooting 32% basically from deep. He shot 32% a year ago from deep. He's taken a much higher volume in his, 17 starts, 69 games, averaging 25 minutes right now. But that number certainly come down from earlier in the season. Like, this is when we start putting our bodies into each bucket, who's going to be a part of the new rebuild and all the draft picks that are coming in and who's not. Ziaire Williams is going into the bring back bucket. Jalen Wilson, it sucks, man. I hate to do it at the back end of an episode like this, but he's going into the right. That's why you're an older player when you come out. It's why you're a second round pick, and it's probably why you're not long for this roster.
Yeah, it's a shame. Ending on a negative note here, but I think it's worth mentioning here because he does get the start, but it just really hasn't. It just hasn't translated, right? And I guess we're bookending it with like Ziaire and how, tall. Yeah. I mean, Jalen Wilson's not all that long, but like a tall, sort of like wing player can kind of get by in the NBA if you're not an on-ball creator. The one way to do it is to play defense and hit threes. And Jalen Wilson like doesn't do either of those things at like a super high level. And so like he's one of these guys. We saw it in the summer league too. Like he was a summer league MVP. It's because he's just one of these guys. It's like right in between. And Summer League's actually a great example of this, where it's like when you just see the difference of like competition and that one tick up. This is why everyone's like, this is why we always say, like, if you're not crushing in the G League, just say the discussion's over, right?
Yep.
Jalen Wilson, I'm confident will go to the G League and put up numbers. Like, because we've seen it in Summer League. I think he can just do just enough. Like the little bits that he loses on the size and the speed wouldn't be as glaring. And he would just do kind of maybe not Summer League style numbers that he was putting up, but he would put up real numbers. And it's just like that extra inch and a half in like arm length, and then that extra 3-point percentage, like kind of down tick that just doesn't take much. Right. And I think he's a very good example of one of these guys that will stick around, like not probably the NBA, but probably have a career like in other spots would be my guess. And because he can just do enough, but when at just the NBA level, it's just a few percentage points off, right?
Yep.
And it's hard to like totally pinpoint where, except it's just like in each little spot. It's like just not tall enough, just not fast enough, just can't shoot enough, just can't get on the dribble enough. Like, but he can do all those things. He can do them all. Yep. He just can't do them at like the just not enough. And it sounds, two guys who, would lose to him 3,000 to nothing. It sounds weird when we're saying this on a podcast or infinity to nothing. Like, so it always sounds a little weird to say that, but just in
two guys who would probably go with the Trendon Watford route and be like, I don't know, I'm gonna try to scrap with him. I'm gonna see what happens.
I mean, two guys that could play him 2-on-1 and probably not score a point. Right. So like, And so it's just mostly
the old Adam gets on Doug's shoulders and wears an oversized basketball jersey to look like one player.
It's only in the context. It's only in the context of his peers, right? Like in the context of his peers, he's just that 1 or 2 percentage points, just like not good enough in all those areas. And it's a shame because I think we saw like what we thought could be sort of the upside case, but I think we're seeing probably what the floor case is. And the floor case is like a question mark around what the long-term viability is.
Yep. Lost to the Pacers here in overtime. They'll see him again on Saturday. We'll get a look at how that's going to play out. And as we said earlier, top of the show, Trendon Watford was one of the better players in the game last night. He likely will not play on Saturday. So where's the offense going to come for Brooklyn if they look to scrap again with the Indiana Pacers? We'll have all that coverage for you next week.
All right, buddy. Let's get a couple solo episodes in the books. It's okay. We're back and better than ever. Make sure you subscribe over to Locked On Nets on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe over wherever you listen on podcasts. Leave reviews everywhere. Leave a comment on YouTube. We throw those up on shows from time to time. So just do all that stuff. It's totally free for you. It really helps us.
Speaking of throwing things up on the show from time to time, I know they always say it somewhat rhetorically or sarcastically, but Locked On Nets legitimately are my first listen every day. Shout out to Doug Norrie and Adam Arbrecht. doing the Lord's work for us Nets fans. Gosh, that's coming from yours truly, Gabe Williams. What a guy. What a guy.
Oh my goodness. Obviously one of the all-time great poets. We're back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball, Gabe Williams, basketball, yeah.